Welcome to today's webinar brought to you by Ahana, Actian, Pythian, and Right Data. I'm Stephen Fegg, Director of Database Trends and Applications and Unisphere Research. I will be your host for today's broadcast. Our presentation today is titled The Future of Data Lakes, Data Warehouses, and Cloud Data Platforms. Before we begin, I want to explain how you can be a part of this broadcast. There will be a question and answer session. If you have a question during the presentation, just type it into the question box provided and click on the submit button. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible, but if your question is not selected during the show, you will receive an email response. Plus, all viewers today will be entered for a chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card just for participating. Okay, now to introduce our speakers for today, we have Rachel Podreski, VP of Technical Services at Ahana, Tracy Curran, Director of Product Marketing at Actian, Joey Jablonski, Vice President of Analytics at Pythian, and Vasu Sadanapalli, CEO of Right Data. Now I'm going to pass the event over to Rachel to get us started. Welcome to the broadcast, Rachel.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here. And thank you all for coming. Today I'm going to be talking about how to transform your data lake into a data lakehouse, what this architecture is, and the benefits that you might have from using it. Introduce myself. My name is Rachel. I have been working with analytics and databases for over 25 years. And I'm really excited about all the new techniques and technology that we have right now to really get the best use of all the data that our organizations give us now. So anyway, so let's just start breaking everything down to, what do we need for cloud-based analytics? And at the very essence, you have users and you have data. Typically, this data is going to be stored as files on disk. Now, in order for users to talk to this data on disk, they need some type of interface. And there's a lot of UIs like Excel or other types of products that allow users to interface with data. But the most common way we do analytics, and I think pretty much everybody will agree with this, is using SQL. So you want your users to be able to write SQL queries to access data that sits on disk. Okay, great. So in order for SQL to be able to talk to that data on disk, you need some type of form of abstraction that organizes the contents of this file. So basically creates columns, provides data types, etc. So some types of translation layer. In most databases, these are called metadata tables. And the last piece is you need some type of system that authenticates users and authorizes them to do stuff. And if you take all of that together, so you have a layer of SQL, you have metadata tables, you have data that is stored on disk in files, we can call that a data warehouse. So capturing all that together, this is a data warehouse. And this is where in the cloud, you might see things like Snowflake, or you might see Redshift or BigQuery. And all of them are, for the most part, the same sort of structure. This data that is stored on disk is in a proprietary format that is typically going to be columnar-based at this point, but it's set up to speak that is perfect for that particular database. But where can we save money, and where can we have flexibility, or where can we utilize or expand this concept? So let's take those files stored on disk. If you look at them just individually, if you save those data as Parquet files, which is a columnar format that is very common for analytics, and you store it in some type of object store, like say S3, this is called a data lake. And data lakes are great, and most people probably already have one. They can be used for machine learning. They're a really excellent way for you to organize the data in your organization. But what about these metadata tables? So now we have this data lake. What do we need to do for this metadata tables? And this is where you can use a catalog like Hive Metastore, which is an open source project, or if you're working in the cloud world or in Amazon, you can use Glue. And the system that authenticates users and has them do authorizes them to do stuff. You probably already have one of those, but you can also use some open source options like Ranger, or you can use stuff in the cloud like AWS Lake Formation. So now you're starting to see that we've gotten most of the pieces of what a cloud data warehouse is, but we can do them in an open way that doesn't lock us into a single database. And we can be much more flexible because that data is in the data lake and allows our users to not just access it, access it through many different types of applications. The last piece is the SQL layer. And there is a spectacular tool called Presto. Presto came out of Facebook and is the heir apparent to Hive. So it allows you to write queries, so write SQL queries, ANSI SQL queries against data that sits in a data lake that's in a file format like Parquet or ORC or even CSV or JSON files. So it will give your users more access to more data throughout your organization. So not only do you have your data lake for machine learning, you can also use your data lake with SQL queries. And Ahana Cloud takes all the work out of this for you. So even though we've broken apart the traditional data warehouse, Ahana Cloud will provide all of this for you in AWS, all in a single UI, easy to manage. But most importantly, it won't take any data out of your system. So there's no need to move your data like a cloud data warehouse from one place into another. No transfer fees, you still maintain the control of your data. It stays in your VPC. It gives you access to AWS tools like Glue or Lake Formation, or open source ones like Hive or Hoodie. So there's lots of different options that you can do. It creates a very flexible infrastructure, but most importantly, because since this is a in-memory distributed solution, it's extremely fast. So you don't give up any performance or any flexibility by creating what is called the Open Data Lakehouse in the cloud. And that's me. I'll pass it back to Stephen.
Thank you very much, Rachel. At this point, I'd like to introduce our next speaker today. We have Tracy Curran, Director of Product Marketing at Actian.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Rachel. That was a good intro. As far as the one thing I pulled away from your section was just that everything is changing, and I don't think that there's a one size fits all, and that's kind of what I wanted to share with you all today. I'm going to try and do it as quickly as possible. Quick introduction to Actian for those that may not know who we are. We've been in this business for about 50 years. Some of you may remember the Ingress database. It was born in 1985 out of UC Berkeley. And ever since then, we've acquired a number of technologies, one of which gives us our integration capability. So you may know that as pervasive data or data junction as it was known. But the bottom line is we've been doing the data stuff for a long time, and we've seen it evolve. So I'm sure that many of you will be familiar with something that looks like this, right? So data is hard, and there's a lot of steps and layers that it goes through to become, from raw data to usable data. And usually sitting in the middle of that is data engineers or expert data teams that are able to transform that from raw data and make it usable to end users and consumers to make business decisions. And that's a lot of complexity. So what Actian wants to do, we realize how important data is. So for us, we know that companies need to win market share. So in order to do that, they need to be able to quickly transform and innovate their products, and they need data to do that. They need to be able to engage with their customer base so that they can increase revenue. So customers today are really looking for very personalized interactions with vendors, And in order to do that, you need to know what your customers are doing and how they're interacting with your brand, both on your site and off your site. We also recognize that data is real time. So any delay in getting data means that you're going to have a delay in reacting to what that data is telling you. And then, of course, everybody these days, especially with the current economic climate, is looking for ways to reduce or at least preserve cost. So if you can automate your data and make sure that it's consistent and reliable, then you can have a greater operational impact using data. So to do that, given our 50-year heritage, Actian has decided to embrace what we call the cloud data platform. So we've taken the best of breed of all of our technologies and code, and we've moved this into a cloud native platform. So by doing this, what we're trying to do is allow analysts or data consumers to self-serve while still allowing the data experts to have some control over how that data is used throughout the business. So instead of having to rely on a complex data stack that only a few people in the organization know how to use, we want to put that into a platform that can be leveraged across the organization by any level of user, and they can use that data to make decisions faster, and they can kind of remove that bottleneck that we see from data engineering teams today. So this is how we view the Avalanche Cloud Data Platform, as a single unified platform to connect, manage, and analyze data. And for us, that means that the way that we do that, that's a little bit different than your traditional cloud data warehouse or the Snowflakes of the world, is we really start with integration. So we have native integration that sits at the center of our platform. This allows you to easily ingest data, transform that data into something usable, and then publish that data to a platform that can be utilized by both data experts as well as maybe those that don't have as much sophistication. So if marketing needs to get some data because they want to send out a year-end promotion, they can do that themselves without having to rely on a ticket over to data engineering. And as we all know, those tickets can sometimes take quite a while to get through the process. And sometimes by the time you get the data back that you need, it's stale. So it's not actionable. So I'm at the halfway mark, but this is a little bit more on how we do it. So with data integration and orchestration as the center, we're bringing in your data, we're transforming it into something usable. We have built-in ETL, ELT, and data quality, so you can make sure that the data you're delivering to your end users is trustworthy. We manage at scale, obviously, as a cloud native platform. We grow with your business, we scale up and down. And then we have superior performance as well. So our vector database, which is kind of the core code, has a ton of performance IP in there that makes it one of the most highly performant data warehouses on the market. And then finally, this is sort of kind of our view, right? So we want Avalanche to be a way for consumers to self-serve, but really for organizations to ingest any data source. So that might be legacy data that you have on-prem that needs to stay on-prem, and or SaaS applications or Excel files that just need to be aggregated. And we want to make sure that the data that is being leveraged to make business decisions is trustworthy and secure. So we have things like data masking available. And the goal here is that less reliance on data engineers and cloud ops teams to get to the data that you need. But at the same time, our platform allows you to use all of the tools that you currently may have in a data engineering. So you don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So we integrate with Informatica and Talent if you're already adopted an ETL tool, for instance. So we see the future as being very composable, and that's why we built the Avalanche Cloud Data Platform, so that users have the ability to use the tools that are most productive for them, but the business still maintains, data integrity and compliance. So with that, I will thank you and turn it back over.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Okay, moving on to our third speaker. Once again, I'd like to introduce you to Joey Jablonski, Vice President of Analytics at Pythian.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen. I really appreciate it. Appreciate everyone's time today. Glad to spend a little bit of time with you about talking about data platforms. How do you build the right data platform for your organization? How do you empower people to consume data? Starting with a little bit of background on Pythian. We're about 450 strong team globally that focuses on delivery of data and analytics platforms in the cloud. We're a multi-time winner of Partner of the Year on the Google Cloud platform, bring a depth of expertise across their capabilities, including capabilities on other cloud platforms, including AWS and Azure, where we have deep expertise as well. The way we look at the data estate for our organizations is through a couple of lenses. We look at the offensive side of the work. That is work that we deliver to the business that really transforms our capabilities as an organization. These are new data science capabilities. These are new sets of data to empower our users to better understand their customers, their customer journeys. And there's defensive data. There's the operational systems, the applications that are very critical to how we run our business on a daily basis. The most successful organizations are the ones who can bring this data together through modern cloud data platforms, integrated in a way that makes it easy to consume, available for the entire organization, and bridging that inevitable gap. We're not going to have an environment that's as simple as one cloud or just in the cloud. Our data is going to span our on-premise environments, our public cloud providers, and then a host of other SaaS applications as well that drive specific business needs in the organization. As we start to talk about empowering our users with that data, we start to talk about what does a platform really enable? Essentially, a platform is that storefront, that front capability that enables our producers of data to provide data for our consumers, and conversely, enables our consumers to find data and assets that are available for them. So as we go down the path of thinking, how do we build enabling data platforms that the organization can consume successfully, we start to look at that storefront as the centralized ability to drive compliance, retention of data, transformation policies, so that both our producers and our consumers are enabled and empowered to operate independently. So they can bring their own data sets to the party for analysis. They can drive their own type of analysis that's what they need for their business units without forcing a lot of centralization that may not meet the needs of our consumers. Ultimately, success comes from the democratization of data, enabling our entire organization base of users, the edges as you would, to consume what data we have, enrich and integrate it with data assets of their own, and publish it back to the organization. The key is that we want to do this without losing observability and control. We want to make sure that our central governance standards of the organization are being enforced, and that the observability is there and we're able to see what's going on with our data, as well as the underlying systems behind it. So as we start to define what our data platform looks like, what sort of functional capabilities we need, what sort of technologies we need to drive it, we really want to start from four sets of capabilities and requirements. We want to think about making sure our data is easy to find. We want to make sure that all data that sits in our platforms is registered and it's described in a consistent way so that our business teams can search for that data through the acronym, the organizational description, the customer, the product, whatever lingo they use, and find the data associated with it. We want to make sure that there's trust in that data, that it's accurate, that it's complete, and that the KPIs behind it, any metrics that we've derived, are governed so that individuals can track what the formulas behind them are and understand if it needs to be updated for their specific business needs. The data needs to be timely. We hear more and more about real time, more and more about streaming data. And it's not because, technology teams just want to deploy the latest and greatest. It's because our business teams want more rapid visibility into what's going on in their markets, their products, and in their supply chain. So as we build modern data platforms, we have to build them with this idea that data is moving faster and it will continue to increase in velocity. And finally, we need this data to be protected. We have no end of requirements when it comes to compliance around private data regulatory requirements about reporting lineage and how data was derived. So as we build our data platforms, we want to think about how do we make sure that the consumers of that data don't have to worry about the specifics of protecting that data, that it's built into the platform, it's automatically provided as part of data sets based on the metadata, based on the tagging of what we've put into our platform. This enables a programmatic approach where the individuals are protected and the rules are applied in a way, even if they're not aware that they're running in the background. So, putting this together, how do we start to think about the functional capabilities that become part of our enterprise data platform? First, we start with our data domains. We start with those grouped sets of data that really drive and power our organization. The common ones from a functional perspective are going to be HR, finance, supply chain. Seeing marketing data sets, seeing customer data sets in there are not uncommon. The idea behind these data domains is it becomes a governance structure that we can leverage. By grouping the data in these ways, we can identify subject matter experts and other data stewards to own and manage the data within our organization, to set the appropriate policies based on the risk, the complexity, and the requirements of the data. Next, we talk about shared services, the capabilities that we deploy within our EDP that enable this connection between producers and consumers. Provide things like data catalogs. This is how we register our data sets and ensure that people can find them. We provide services for master data management, meeting that quality need, completeness, and accuracy. And then we start to add in capabilities like feature stores, this idea that our platform becomes a basis for greater capabilities. That is machine learning, data science, advanced analysis of our data. So by putting the feature store in there as a core capability, it's available to the broad organization. Most important is how people consume the data from our data platform. We don't want to lock it up, throw away the key. We want to expose that data. So we want to build powerful and compelling visualizations. We want to make sure this data is leveraged to automate business processes wherever appropriate. We want to give our data science and our machine learning teams access to this data to really understand what's going on in our business and how do we improve. And then monetization. See if there's data in our environment that we can publish externally to a marketplace and create new revenue streams within the organization, or drive new types of partnerships that we weren't able to have before. So as we start to think about how do we build these data platforms in a successful way, we have our 10 principles. These are the best practices that we leverage here at Pythian as we architect these platforms, as we work to prioritize the features and the functionality that become part of your enterprise data platform. We're not going to dig into all 10 today. We are going to dig into a small handful that we find particularly compelling, especially as you start to think about how you begin this journey in your own organization. We always like to start with making sure the data platform reflects the data strategy of the organization. Your data strategy is the connection point you have between the organizational's large objectives, grow revenue, drive new revenue, and the connection with how do we use data to drive it. Here we have an example for a digital media company looking at things like increasing cross-selling, lowering our OpEx, improving our listener experience. Each of these are things that we can improve upon by better leveraging our data assets in a unified data platform. Next, we talk about metadata-driven processes. Automate anything we can and everything we possibly can. This way, we start to gather data about our data sets. We can drive access to them. We can drive automated data quality. We can make sure the data can be found and linked and referenced and governed in a meaningful way. The more effective we can automate our processes through the use of metadata and other descriptive information, the lower our operational overhead is going to be for our environment. Next, think early about data science. As we get the beginnings of our data platform out there, let's start to think about what sort of ML ops capability do we need? How do we empower our data science users to access the data and deploy models? The sooner we think about this, the more effective we can make sure those capabilities, like our feature stores, like our ML ops capabilities, are part of the platform. I'll leave you with this. Driving data access in your organization is about driving self-service, giving the edges of the organization the ability to gather and access whatever data they need to be effective, make decisions. It's going to be a journey for your organization. It's going to be steps incrementally where you mature the technology, you build your data literacy, you find and learn new things. But ultimately, as long as we're measuring those, as we're aligning our investments and our data strategy to the outcomes and the capabilities that we're building, you'll have a more empowered organization that's better able to leverage their data, drive the right decisions, increase their value. I really appreciate everyone's time. Stephen, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you very much, Joey. And now I'd like to introduce our final speaker today, last but not least, Vasu Sadanapalli. Vasu, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate it. I'm very happy to be here. Hello, everybody. I'm Vasu Sadanapalli. I'm the CEO and Chief Architect for Right Data. I want to take a moment and introduce our company first. Right Data is a data software company. We provide comprehensive modern data management and data ops capabilities. Using our no-code, low-code products, our customers can simplify the complexities involved in data modernization journey. So we not only cover the breadth of data management lifecycle components like data ingestion, transformation, built-in lakehouse, data quality, wrangling, AutoML modeling, but also the depth by supporting different data processing types like microbatching, data streaming, data replication for disparate data sources. Let me now get into the crux of the meeting. Let me talk about the evolution of data platforms, especially in the past couple of decades. Starting from a data warehouse to the data lake, now the cloud data warehouse and data lake houses. The key objective is to empower businesses with the right data at the right time and deliver to the right stakeholders. That being said, let me double click into data warehouse. As most of us know, data warehouse contains mostly structured data, typically hosted on-premise. Infrastructure is maintained by clients' admins. The emphasis is on designing the data model upfront, organize the data for improving read performance. Data is typically centralized. Single version of truth is the key principles here. Also, the data ownership is also centralized. In the analytics maturity curve, data warehouse is targeted to cover descriptive and diagnostic statistics, analytics rather. As far as the stakeholders are concerned, typically data engineers, formerly known as ETL/BI developers, and business analysts and data analysts, these are the kind of stakeholders we would have in data warehousing space. The end goal here is to feed reporting, dashboarding, and downstream planning systems. Moving on to the data lake, the data in the data lake is mostly saved in semi-structured formats in the form of files, typically hosted on-premise. Infra is maintained, managed by clients' admins. With the data lake, the motivation here is to collect the raw data, but cleanse and curate as per the business requirements after the fact. Data decentralization is a key here. Also, hitting the agility is going to be the key aspect as well. In the analytics maturity curve, data lake is targeted to cover predictive and prescriptive analytics, with the stakeholders typically being data engineers and data scientists. The end goal here is to enable machine learning modeling, advanced statistical analysis, ad hoc data exploration, etc. Moving on to the data lakehouse / cloud data warehouses. In this case, the data can be saved in structured or semi-structured formats, in most cases both, typically hosted on cloud, with fully managed services provided by cloud vendors. The motivation here is to hit best of both worlds, where raw data can be saved without any data modeling, typically catering to advanced analytics and ML, whereas some data gets pushed into different layers where data is modeled ahead of time for optimal read performance. The architecture would support for all 4 maturity stages of the analytics, starting from a descriptive, diagnostics, predictive, and also prescriptive analytics. So helping most data practitioners like data engineers, data scientists, business analysts, etc. So that being said, let me move on to the next discussion. To get the most out of the modern data platforms, customers need modern data management tools. We talked about the modern data platforms in the previous section. Now, for us to enable data modernization from a platform standpoint, we need modern data management tools. The key issue we have in this space today is whether you use open source or most vendor products, the need for technology footprint is rapidly expanding. This is mainly because solutions are only satisfying a small subset of the modern data management needs. This is also resulting in a high learning curve, need for expansive skill resources, etc. So this is exactly our toolset comes in. Our Right Data toolsets, Dextrous and RDT, are targeted to provide a unified experience to the data stakeholders by covering most data management needs under one roof rather. So the next thing that I want to discuss is the emerging phenomena in the space of data mesh, where data is targeted, is normally treated as a product. The four key pillars of this framework are data as a product. The second is domain-oriented decentralized ownership. The third is federated governance. The fourth is self-service data infrastructure as a platform. So in my opinion, as an industry, the technology is matured enough to handle the first three, but not the self-service data infrastructure as a platform. Like any other framework, the frameworks are only as good as implementability, meaning implementation is going to be the vital aspect for any kind of a framework. Implementation requires tools. We at Right Data are deeply committed to deliver the software that would enable the three key pillars of data mesh, starting from transforming analytics-ready data sets into data products. Let me just dig deep into the data products itself, right? What, when, and how a data set can transform or treated as data product, right? There are four key attributes a data set needs to have for us to call it as a data product. Of course, it has to be searchable, explorable, shareable. Besides that, the data set should have an integrated cataloging, business descriptions associated with it, bundled with active and passive metadata, built-in lineage, and also readily available descriptive statistics and key quality indicators are a must. These are the four characteristics that should be tied to the data set, and it should be searchable, it should be reusable. That's when a data set can be called and transformed into data product. Now that we talked about the emerging phenomena, data products, etc., let me move on. Last but not least is any investment we do in the data platforms are only as good as its reliability and trust. Creating technical data quality rules for hundreds of objects on a data platform would be practically impossible to configure manually, right? This is where augmented data quality capabilities would come in handy. Using augmented data quality feature, thousands of rules can be created in minutes rather than months. Coupled with the technical data quality, the business data quality would be important as well. Especially this is to enable trust on the data platform to the business community so that adoption can actually go up. This is typically done using data reconciliation, business rule validations, etc. I want to conclude that our tool, Dextrous and RDT combined, are positioned to simplify your data modernization journey with our comprehensive data management capabilities. Any questions that you have, please reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to address any kind of questions, and we can do the tailored demos and POCs, etc. That being said, thanks for the opportunity. I'm handing it back to Steve.
Thank you very much, Vasu. Okay, so we've got a lot of questions to get through, so I'm just going to start right off here. First question, Rachel. How does a data lakehouse compare to a streaming OLAP databases like Druid or ClickHouse?
Ooh, that's a fun question. So Druid and ClickHouse and Pinot are the kind of the next generation of data warehouses that are out there. They're very similar. They're columnar based, but they've been designed specifically to handle sort of streaming data as well as batch data. So what are the differences? A lakehouse is going to give you very similar functionality. It handles very similar use cases, so dashboards and BI reports. You can do streaming data into a lakehouse, but if you do need that sort of real-time aspect and you need sub-second response, those types of products are probably a better choice. But they're pricey to maintain. Thanks, Stephen.
Understood. Thanks, Rachel. Okay, Tracy, next question for you. How do you plan to handle multi-cloud?
So, we strongly believe that the market's going to move towards a multi-cloud setup regardless, and many already have. So for us, we try to stay very close to our customers and understand where they're deploying certain workloads. But as far as our platform, we are able to handle multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, and on-prem. So it essentially allows customers to keep data in whatever environment is best suited for their workload, but still be able to pull that data into the platform and analyze it and get value from it quickly.
Understood. Thanks, Tracy. Okay, next question is for Joey. Joey, how do I upskill my team as we deploy net new analytical platforms?
So when I start to think about data literacy, that is the skills of the organization, there's a couple of dimensions that we like to think about. First is, how do people consume data in the organization? That is our business analysts, our executives, our product managers, our product owners. And training for those teams needs to focus very much on what are modern visualization tools like Looker, like Tableau. Make sure they have the ability to access data, make sure they have the ability to present it in a meaningful way, and then tell a story behind it. What does the data tell in terms of recommendations or next actions? On the other side of the equation, we have our data platform teams, the folks that are doing data integration on a daily basis, doing data transformation. And their skill sets have to be very much aligned with whatever the technology decisions are of the organization. If you go down the path that we're going to build our enterprise data platform on Google, we should very much be leveraging the training and material coming from the Google ecosystem for their different services, their service architecture, the features that go with them. That way they become deep experts in that platform, and they can leverage the new capabilities that are coming out from the vendors' roadmaps over time.
Understood. Thank you very much, Joey. Vasu, moving over to you. Question that actually just recently came in. Are you saying Right Data is a Swiss Army knife, or is it more like a smartphone?
Definitely we are more smartphone. So at the heart of it, our software is basically a data integrations product. But for a full-fledged data management, it's not just having a data management is not sufficient. We would need to take it all the way through, starting from ingestion all the way to the machine learning modeling and data wrangling. So that's what we are. Think of it like a smartphone where you have the core principle behind it is having a communications enabled, whereas other components like you need maps, you need camera, everything else, but you may not be the specialist in camera, but our software actually allows you to do the machine learning modeling and wrangling, which allows you to take it all the way to the end in terms of the maturity.
Understood. Okay. So Rachel, this next question is for you. What other technologies can you use for a data lakehouse?
Oh, so yeah, there's a lot of really interesting technologies coming out. If you're interested in adding transactions, so ACID type things, or file management to your data lake, you might want to look at Hoodie or Iceberg, or even Delta Lake from Databricks. I think I mentioned for a data catalog, you have Glue and you have a Hive Metastore. Those are pretty standard. Then in terms of file formats, Parquet or JSON or CSV even are all really good options there. Again, for the query layer, Presto's the number one in that space, but I think Databricks is coming up with a few options as well.
Understood. Thanks, Rachel. Tracy, question for you. At Actian, what do you think the top challenge is right now for data warehouse professionals?
I would say that in order for a data warehouse to be effective, the data that goes into it needs to be standardized, normalized, and useful. So, we hear this a lot from our customers that the data engineering teams are so highly specialized, they're expensive resources, and they present a bottleneck for end users that really just want to get to certain data now. So, we have some verticalized solutions, but we hear a lot from departments like marketing that they need something that they don't need to be experts with data and understand schemas. They just want to be able to do some SQL queries and get to the information that they need. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges with data warehouses, because if you have a small data engineering team, they've got to come in and triage tickets and figure out why pipelines are broken before they can ever get to the new data requests and get that data into the warehouse in a usable way. So that's probably the biggest challenge we're seeing right now.
Understood. Thanks, Tracy. Joey, this next question is for you. How do I know where to start with the many use cases our business teams are throwing at us?
So this is a common problem we run into with pretty much every customer we talk to, that if you go survey the organization, you ask your marketing partners, your sales partners, your supply chain, what do you need data for? There's no end of creativity in terms of new use cases, things we could predict. The challenge comes into each of those is going to have a different return for the business. That is, does it drive more revenue? Does it drive operational savings? Does it save my people time? Versus the complexity of building it. Maybe I want to build a predictive model, but we don't even have the data quality minimums to do so. So we tend to think about two dimensions. We tend to think about, on the vertical axis, we're going to graph the value of a use case. And these don't need to be absolute values, but more relative values. This is going to give me about $3 million in added revenue. This is going to give me about $1 million in OpEx savings. Then on the horizontal of the graph, we start to think left to right in terms of complexity. What we end up seeing is that we're going to have a cluster of use cases on the upper left of the graph that essentially mean very, very high value, very low effort to build them. And on the right, on the bottom part of the graph, we're going to have a cluster around things that are extraordinarily difficult to build and significantly lower value to the organization. That right there gives us our chart. We start to prioritize from the upper left down to the bottom right and work on the use cases as fast as our level of investment and our organization's capacity will let us.
Understood. Thanks, Joey. Vasu, this next question, we tend to be getting a lot of questions actually about these topics right now. How real is data fabric and data mesh?
Yes, data mesh definitely is a framework. The reality comes in when it comes to implementation. There are different schools of thoughts, and the person who actually coined that whole term of a data mesh itself, they talk about this is an organizational construct. I believe taking that organizational construct and actually taking it to the reality is going to be where the value addition going to be. So converting the analytics ready data assets into the data products is going to be very critical. To me, it has to be tangible. Data mesh or data fabric should be tangible. There should be some interfaces where organizations can collaborate within organizations. The various business units can actually collaborate on. In fact, we are building a component called Corporate Data Marketplace that allows you to actually, as a producer, you can actually publish a data product. As a consumer, you can search through, easily find and reuse the data products instead of building from scratch, which is the whole concept of data mesh, is being reusability and also having a microservice kind of an architecture, so that you don't have to rebuild things easily, be able to search through, etc. So yeah, to me that's very real. But not all 4 pillars, like I mentioned earlier, are practical. At least first 3 are very much a reality in the current state of affairs.
Understood. Would anyone else like to weigh in on data mesh and data fabric? Okay, moving on. So next question, Ahana. Rachel, can you explain the difference between data fabric, data product, and data vault?
I'm not sure if I'm the person they want for that one. The difference between data vault, fabric. Yeah. So I'm not as familiar with data vault as some of the other people on this call are. So I probably want to punt that to them.
Okay. Anyone have any thoughts on this question here?
Well, I mean, I have some thoughts.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I think.
Okay, sure.
I think that there's,
we'll take them. Sure. Please go, Rachel.
Sorry, that was Tracy. I was just going to chime in that I think that these are conceptually, all methodologies. I really, when I read these things in the market, I really think about them much like the evolution of DevOps, right? It's not a piece of software. It's an amalgamation of tools, but most importantly of processes that, enable faster insights from data. So I don't know that, I'm not an expert in any one of the 3 theories, but we'll see what kind of comes out in the wash. I feel like there's still a lot of maturity and kind of practical application that needs to be exposed for all 3 of those in the next year or so. But I know that the analysts are definitely charging ahead with these concepts.
Understood. Thanks, Tracy. And it looks like we do have another question directed towards actually both of you as well as Rachel. Question, what about recent moves / products and technologies to be more decentralized or distributed?
Yeah, I'll take that. I can see that question, like Starburst using data mesh. So Starburst is interesting. Starburst is actually based on Presto as well. And but what Starburst has done is made that more of a serverless option in their Galaxy product. And they're going more for what we used to call a data federation use case, where you leave your data in situ. You basically leave it in the databases that they exist in, and you use Presto to query against all those different databases, which is great, and I think it looks good on paper, but it's difficult to execute in production on a major scale, because you are trying to manage data in a bunch of different places. And like you mentioned here, network latency, you're only as fast as your slowest data source. So I think it's good for edge cases and to fill gaps. But in terms of replacing a data warehouse or creating a full-fledged analytics architecture, I don't think it's necessarily the best choice.
Understood. Tracy, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I have to just echo Rachel on that. It's not a substitute. So.
Okay, moving on. Joey, this next question is for you. I keep hearing that I need to go faster. What does that even mean?
I'm not sure I've met a CIO in the past few years that hasn't asked this question as we start to talk about timelines to build their enterprise data platform, to start to bring in new analytic capabilities. And I think it's a function of just the pressure that, modern technology organizations are feeling for digital transformation, changing how they engage with their customers, creating richer journeys and experiences. What I believe most, executives are asking when they ask to go faster is, how do you show me progress sooner? I don't think they're necessarily asking for, how do we, get the team to put in more hours or that sort of thing. I think they really want to know, how do we show progress in a more measured, more manageable, and sooner fashion? And I think there's a couple pieces. First is, don't recreate technology that's already out there in the market. As we start to look at the public cloud providers, we start to look at the software capabilities that come from other vendors on this call, there's a really rich ecosystem of tools to bring in data, enrich data, measure data, and then provide that for consumption. Leverage tools wherever you can. Very rarely is there a value to reinventing the wheel or building something that's so specific to your organization that it takes away the ability to gain the advantages from the vendor roadmap. I think that's first. Second is, demo what you're doing early and often. The sooner you can get a visualization or a dashboard on the front of your data, show that to executive teams, share that with your business teams, the sooner it becomes real for them, becomes tangible. And then bring those teams along on the journey as you're doing sprint demos, as you're doing planning and retrospectives and your other sorts of agile methodologies. Bring those business partners along for the journey so they can see what the complexity of the work is, but also see the incremental progress that's being built up, and they get a voice in adjusting it so that the first time they see it isn't the last opportunity to change it, but they have incremental opportunities to improve and make changes, make sure it meets their business needs.
Understood. Thanks, Joey. Okay, Vasu, this next question is for you. Does Right Data compete with or complement Databricks?
Good question. Actually, we do both. If customers don't have any kind of a cluster set up on Spark, we can actually bring in Spark Cluster to enable the whole data engineering automation. If a customer were to already have a Databricks, we can bolt onto it to harness the power of Databricks. So we can do both. We complement. If the customer already has one, we can actually bring a brand new solution, which is lower cost and also easy to maintain, and also it's self-contained within the infrastructure of the client. If they were to go with our cluster, we do both.
Understood. So we're almost at the top of the hour, but before we go, I have a question for all of you. And why don't we start with Rachel? If there's one thing you'd really like our attendees today to walk away keeping in mind, what would that be?
Great. I want the attendees to walk away with, there are a lot of options now for doing any type of cloud data analytics. There's a plethora of them. And basically, if anybody's telling you that you can do transactions and OLTP at the same time that you're doing analytics and OLAP, they're selling you something. But take a look at the technologies out there for reducing costs and being more flexible, and you'll find that your path to database serenity is very wide open.
Understood. Tracy, how about you?
Yeah, so I would say something similar. So, there's no holy grail. And so, the future will be composable. There's a lot of technologies that exist, especially in larger organizations, that are still very much viable. And, they will need to be modernized, but there's options out there that are not just rip and replace, which can be quite disruptive. And so, as data begins, or as data continues, I should say, to mature, look at the various options and see what fits your business, and then, carefully consider how that data needs to be secured and protected, but most importantly, how, with the understanding that consumers in the world needs data faster in real time, truly, how can you make that happen while still keeping the security and data sovereignty that your business needs to remain compliant?
Understood. Joey.
So I would leave everyone with, this is a journey. Every organization is at a different point in maturity today and is going to move at a different velocity as the team upskills, as new technology comes in, and as the skills and ability across the organization level up to consume new technologies and new capabilities. Look to other organizations for inspiration about architectural patterns, about methods, about tools, about upskilling, about training programs. Don't necessarily look at other organizations and measure your velocity against theirs unless it's really a one-to-one match. Use your own organization as the benchmark for how you can take that next step faster as you continue to mature on the journey. And also accept that things are going to change. This industry is changing much more rapidly than the data world did 15 years ago. The vendors and technologies that we use today are going to evolve and change. Build your architecture, build your team in a way that's going to allow for that flexibility so that as the next interesting technology comes out, you can seamlessly integrate it into your environment without having to do a lot of rip and replace or a lot of complex architectural changes.
Okay, and Vasu.
Cool. This may sound very strange coming from a software product vendor. Before embarking on any data modernization journey or a replatforming, ask the question, the why question. Because asking that why question gives the right kind of perspective on why I'm modernizing it so that you can look for the right kind of solutions. So one solution does not fit for all. So, taking a jump, taking a leap towards implementing Snowflake is a click of a button. So is any kind of a cloud providers. Taking that initial step is easy, but taking a step back and figuring out the holistic process, what all the various components that needs to be in place, what kind of data management software is to be in place, how do we actually minimize my technology footprint? These are the kind of right questions that we need to ask so that we don't come to a situation where we get into a mess of so many softwares, so many components, so many open source components, and you all had to work on engineering problem than actually solving the true business problem, which is the end value to be created by the data initiatives that we're working on. Asking that question why is important. Focusing on having the right strategy to handle that is going to be critical.
Understood. Well, I would like to give a huge thank you to our speakers for joining us today and sharing their insights and expertise. Once again, Rachel Podreski, VP of Technical Services at Ahana, Tracy Curran, Director of Product Marketing at Actian, Joey Jablonski, Vice President of Analytics at Pythian, and Vasu Sadanpali, CEO of Right Data. If you would like to review this presentation or send it to a colleague, you can use the same exact URL that you used for today's live event. It will be archived, and we will send you an email notification once that archive is posted. And again, just for participating in today's event, you could win this $100 Amazon gift card. The winner will be announced on November 30th. We'll let you know if you're the lucky viewer. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and we hope to see you again soon.